Okay, welcome to Rebels of SaaS. I'm really excited to be in the studio today. I mean, I don't even know how to introduce this person, right? So I'll say that I love following, everything that I see on LinkedIn that he does. I'm not going to give some kind of fake intro. I'm just going to say that this guy knows his stuff. And I'm really stoked that he came to chat with us today. Thought leader, executive, absolutely known in this industry. But yeah, so Jeff, can you share a little bit with us about you and all the things? Maybe give us a little intro, talk to us about your little injury.
Oh, yeah. Well, people don't want to hear about that, but I'll make up something funny about that later on. But I'm Jeff Kushmerek, so you can save yourself having to pronounce it. But we're 10 minutes in because we were just walking through the pronunciation keys. So nice to meet you all. I'm currently the CEO of a company called Infinite Renewals, where we help companies with their post-sale journey, whether it be implementation or success or services or all those types of things. Before that, I was an operating executive at a couple companies that I was lucky enough to choose wisely and, as we say, fall ass backwards into and wind up at a good company. So I had a bunch of exits and an IPO and kind of learned a lot in those and, tried to do some startup stuff. Learned more through some of those failures than I did some of the big exits. And yeah, I think that's it, right? That's my deal. I started off as a programmer and they said, you talk too much. So they started putting me in front of customers. So there you go.
You were a programmer?
Yeah. I was just talking to my daughter last night when she's a computer science major. We were just talking about Java and Python and all that other stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I know that you obviously see so much from an industry level around AI and all the cool things. So you get the real on what's the actual AI.
Oh yeah.
So I'm curious, what's the tea there? I mean, what do you think the effect on people that do programming and coding and all this, what do you think that's going to look like as this really fast evolution of AI?
Yeah. I think it frees up a lot. I think if we could take this one example and, apply it to our industry, which I can do that as well too. But, with developers and things like that, it should be, and we're seeing this where it's freeing people up from like the mundane tasks, right? I mean, I think about it like, when we all go in and, put one of our posts in or try and do some generating ideas and ChatGPT and come back and like, God, it's terrible, but it gives you like a little framework that you then go in and like fix. And God forbid you ever, like if I ever took anything, print out and posted it. I kind of think about it like that too. Like, it'll give you this basic construct that you need that you can then go add in, but it takes away like, I think from the development that like, hey, create an environment that'll do X and the Y, and then allows you to do like, gives you the freedom to do what you want to do without having to do some of like the BS tasks and things like that. One interesting thing is, I always forget the name of which podcast it was, but if you ever listen to the Andreessen Horowitz podcast, it's called like Easy 16. And I can't remember what they titled it, but it's really interesting to listen to because they were talking about how AI is already, I don't want to say destroyed, but it's caused so much problems around how to price support software. So think about support. You have a lot of customer support reps, right? And then suddenly you have these agents out there that can do a lot of the BS types of tasks, right? So much so that Zendesk is having to rethink how they price they might not even be able to use a subscription model anymore. And it might be more like a Stripe or Twilio type of a thing where you're paying per transaction or API request or something like that. So suddenly like Zendesk, like we're going to lose money if we're just selling seats because that account went from 1,000 to 500 X, Y, and Z and things like that. So, in terms of like for the CS people and everything, I think it'll help, reduce a lot of the mundane tasks. So you can do a lot of the strategic stuff. That's how I'm sort of envisioning it. Right now, it's all BS. If anybody can tell you they can get a lot out of it, unless they've done something where they can create it as a signal, right? And I just tell everybody that I get a lot of offers. Can you look at my software? It's AI and X, Y, and Z. And it's just like, can it feed into the CRM, right? Can it feed into your eventual, whatever tool your CS people are looking at so they can get the signal? Like, I don't want anybody ever logging into some new software. They're not going to do it. Like, they can barely get to their tasks that they need to do. So the generative AI stuff, like, okay, nice start. But until I can say, as a CS leader, click a button or speech to text and say, tell me how the team's currently doing. And they're like, well, your implementations are 30 to 45 days late, especially in the UK. And you've got a whole bunch of CS people that aren't responding to their tasks. And you've got a lot of your renewal processes that are, 60 days behind. Like that's what I'm looking forward to. Right. And that saves you scanning a spreadsheet and all this other stuff and everything like that. So that's where I get at. Helping us work smarter is how I'm envisioning it or seeing it, especially with these agents. Now you get agents, I can talk to agents and all this other stuff. But I responded to something that, Nick from Gainsight said the other day and how I believe, which is we can't ask CSMs to be, prompt experts and knowing which LLM model and should I use DeepSeek versus it's crazy. Like, these people, they're insanely busy. So that's my thought on it all.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting that it's so true though. Everybody is stretched to the point of being so thin. And then it's like, hey, to really have like competitive differentiation, you have to, hey, you need to have a brand and you need to be a thought leader. And then by the way, let's go do AI and that, and I think that's why as an industry, not just CS, but there's, so many, folks and everyone that tries to do something creative is, I'm not going to bash them. Right.
Yeah.
But like, it's interesting to me that these things, these bandwagons is what I like to affectionately call them.
If you've ever been in the boardrooms, I could name tech trends from, 2008 and moving forward. We had the whole, I lived through the apps and they all came out. So every board meeting was like, what's your app strategy? So you rush to just put your website into an app, right? And then what's your Internet of Things strategy? Oh, great. My kid's teddy bear can now talk to my grandma and stuff like that, right? And actually had one of those.
That sounds kind of creepy.
Yeah.
A little useful, but
it also caused a denial of service attack that brought the internet down, but we're not here to talk about that. So kidding. So always change your passwords from admin. But anyway, so Internet of Things, blah, 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 moving over. So, the two industries that got funding and that did better year over year statistically were AI and vertical SaaS. Those were the two industries that killed it last year. And so rightly, everybody's bored. If you have a board meeting, there's somebody. We always used to say somebody read TechCrunch this morning because you get into a board meeting and somebody's like, what are you doing with the AI and everything? And so you got to show that you have a strategy. So you stop hearing about it. So you put your quick AI thing out there. This is like, here's your being able to launch a Gen AI email from your CSP. That's what happened for the CS industry. Did that really help anybody out? I'm like, I don't know. We had templates in the CRM and the CSPs already. Like, it's just, anyways. So then it's like, what can you really do? And I don't know. I'm going more towards these systems need to be less bloated. And I just remembered watching Gainsight in 2014. It was like, I'm so busy. What do I need to do today? Right. And versus like, I've seen so many product announcements and feature requests or feature updates over the last 6 months where I'm like, that just seems like a lot more things that I need to know. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I do weird stuff in my spare time sometimes.
So we all know you do. I'm here solely on this podcast to talk about how
the weird things that I do. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. As long as we're aligned there. So this is one of those crazy things. I like to collect old magazines. So I was checking out like a popular science from
Popular Science. Okay.
Yeah, like
Glamour at all, or
I don't know. So it was funny though. I promise you, I'm gonna bring this around. It was funny because they were talking about how they had a picture of this car that looked like a donut. Dudes were driving it, looked like they were going to go ride a horse, right? So it was that old, like I would say probably around 1920, based on the copyright. So it was just really neat.
Mustaches twirled and everything.
Yeah, the whole bit. So you're looking in, it's like, what's going on with this? And all of a sudden, they start to talk about how you need to come and learn to change the world and how we as humanity need to be ready to flex that and become educated and be, and they actually use the word, and I know you've heard this all over CS. We need to have, ambassadors, we need to have AI. I know. And that's exactly the word they use. So anyway, it was just very cool. And in that moment, I don't know if it was the fact that I was 2 glasses of wine deep or, or the fact that it was an actual thought. But I was like,
Yeah.
man, there's some alignment. Everything that's new, great, and different. Always this whole, it's going to change humanity. Yes, it's a fast paced thing. And it's like keeping it real, really, I love like, when I look at thought leadership and who I lean into, there's a couple of folks. I love your stuff. Obviously, I'm big on Christy,
Yeah.
the Bobs, as I affectionately call them, London and Mathers, because it's all based and
Yeah.
just that real, like,
Right. They've done the job. Yeah.
right.
So talk to me, was this a boxed wine in a fridge or is it
I love a box wine in a fridge. Actually, there, Jeff. No,
so
this
easy to just tilt the box a little? It's just so convenient.
Yeah, it is convenient. But and real talk, because this is just something that's kind of silly on the side. I have this wonderful antique grand piano in my parlor, and my cat just completely fell into the middle of it. So that's fun.
That's
Now
amazing.
she's locked out though. So this is real life in my house, Jeff. So everyone listening, this is the level of crazy that that life can have sometimes.
I interrupted you. You're about to ask me a question, so I apologize.
No, I want to know more about what is positive rebellion in your opinion. We talk about it all the time on the show. I'd love to hear that. Like, what's that to you? How do you show up the right way doing that? What's that to you?
I always straddle the line of like, how much of an asshole should I be when I respond to somebody on certain things, right? And as I get older, I'm trying to be less reactive and everything. But, sometimes, you try and really show somebody like, there's a couple things I only like to talk, I know you were to ask me about like on LinkedIn and everything, because that's where I show up the most and stuff like that. But like, I try and only post about stuff that I know about, right? And if I haven't had that experience, I really don't or I'll say like, hey, help me out here or something like that. So I'm really trying to, when people are talking about like up here, I'm trying to bring it down to everybody about what can you do right now, right? And I think a lot of it, and we might have talked about this, but there's so much like, hey, this is what, I don't mean to pick on Gainsight, but, big company, everybody needs CS ops, everybody, needs to do X, Y, and Z and ambassador programs, everything. And, when you're like one of the number one thought leaders, suddenly it's like, when we go into a new company and we work with people and we're auditing them and we're talking to them, they have such shame because they feel like they've just been reading all of the stuff and they're like, we're none of that. And I'm like, no, you guys are the norm. That stuff's not the norm. So we're really, I don't know what to call it rebellion, but we're just trying to really just keep it real for what you need. We're very minimum viable process. You only need to do XD, if you can automate within your current tool without having to bring in this big other tool, that's awesome. Do it until until it doesn't work anymore. Try and be a little ahead of the curve. That's sort of how it is. I try not to go on people's posts when they're kind of spouting some stuff, but if you catch me in a salty mood and I think it's not where it should be, then I'll just try and be like, right, okay, that works for a subset of the population or something like that. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, but I don't even feel like it's rebellious. I'm just trying to feel like, everybody's talking about stuff that is very idealistic. I just try and bring it back down to realistic.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Like, oh, I'm going to be a rebel. I know a lot of people create like the fake enemies and all that other stuff. And I'm just, no, thanks. I just try and just bring in real world experiences. And I love when people prove me wrong too, because it gets out of that confirmation bias aspect of things, like where I just kind of drive in on all of our projects that we work on. There's 4 of us that do a lot of the research with companies. I always make sure there's 2, because you get really bad confirmation bias, especially if you've been in that role and you feel the pain when they're talking about it and stuff like that. So I just really trying to always avoid like that confirmation bias, group mentality, group think stuff. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that the fact that you bake that into kind of leadership style, I appreciate, because it leans into just the fact that if everybody thinks the same way in a room, then it gets really, boring pretty quick, and the solutions aren't as good as they could be and all the things. I'm curious, I think like the whole not giving services away for free thing. I don't want to get you on your soapbox here, but you share some really great advice on this. Do you mind giving us like
So in general, we should use services as a blanket for like implementation, which is essentially configuration. Like real professional services should never be free because you're customizing software and scoping things and stuff like that. But a lot of people kind of use similar terms, but I like to say implementation, should be charged for, or at least people know what the value of what they're getting is. If I always say it should be 20% of your software agreement, and there's a lot of data out there, and don't just look at me like Greg Danes, there's a lot of great stuff around this too, where your LTV and your CAC and all those numbers are improved with an implementation fee, especially if you walk into the scenario. First of all, right, if I said my implementation fee is $5,000 on the sales sheet, and I struck it through to discount it, people do that a lot. I'm like, that's fine because people see that they're getting $5,000. But I'm like, put an asterisk on that and say, if you get this done within 30 days or 45 days, right? And so if you have this carrot or stick approach to things, it's been proven out there that people feel value to it. But like if you see so many customers that their implementations are going super long, because the customers aren't showing up, essentially. They're not doing their jobs that you're giving them to do. And they're like, oh, we'll get to it next time. It's not that high in my priority list, where if suddenly you're like, hey, that cost you $10,000 or $5,000. And Joey over here turns into a pumpkin in 30 days. So you've got 30 days to get it done. And you may have to, if you don't get it done within that time, listen, I run a business. I got to move them along to the next one. I can't have somebody sitting around with 20, 30, 40 projects wondering when it's going to pop up. And I'll say, we might have to double charge you for this. I will say, people like freak out when I say that. Like, I've never had to double charge people ever. I've used that as a threat. And then I'll say, listen, we're not going to charge you if your person shows up for the next 3 weeks, does X, Y, and Z, and boom, boom, and boom. Because you should never feel bad about this because they're paying for the software. You're trying to get them the value that they're paying for. So you should never feel bad about essentially advocating for your customer. And I've had people that I'd escalated to back to the economic buyer. And sometimes they've asked me to escalate. They're like, look, they dumped this on me. I've got like 15 other things. I have to go work on this. Please escalate. I need to show them that I can't do all these things that have been dropped on my plate. So that's my big soapbox thing that you asked me not to get on, but I don't think I'm soapboxy too much and just kind of explaining the situation. So
no, I think it's good. I mean, frankly, the detail around it is definitely the way in which you approach it. Like you say, you went in, had the conversation from a negotiation lens and never actually had to go there from that. But at the same time, right, that experience and leveraging that as a tool is huge because especially if pivoting away for 30 seconds from B2B SaaS, like I started out in telecom and a lot of MSP sort of, and it's even worse there, right? For all the reasons, we have these implementations that drag on forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just crazy, but no, it's an astute point, and I appreciate the advice around that.
Sure.
I don't know how, because we're having a blast, between all the things and the services and the rebellion and, stuff, but we have come to the end of our conversation.
Wow.
Do you want to close us out?
Do I want to close? If you want more, if you want to chat, hold on one second. Let me check my calendar one second. We'll take this all out in post, as the cool kids say. I've got time. I booked an hour. Yeah. Because I assume people would show up and their mics wouldn't work and they'd be late and things.
I did. So by the way, he's definitely talking about me. I have mics and posts that don't work well and all the stuff. So I will say that it is definitely on me. So, but
I made sure to shame you on our DMs. So
I look forward to you shaming me on my DMs, Jeff. It would not be for me since we have started. I had a connection. It would not be a good week for me if I didn't have some sort of shame from you.
Yeah. And just said, you had one job.
I mean, really. So, I would love to know more. Can you share with us a little bit around like specific targeted ways that you have in your experience got customers? Like, I mean, obviously there's this one mechanism. How else do you get people to actually care? Where's that buy-in? How do you generate that buy-in when you're getting these, I've never walked into an organization that didn't have this problem, these elongated implementation cycles, and everybody wants to solve them in the boardroom. They're like, hey, this is crazy. This is, adding to all the costs that are kind of intrinsic to this. Talk to us about that. How the hell do we solve for this?
You have to start it off. Well, there's so much to say here, but let me slow it down a little bit. If you start off every engagement with the economic buyer, so the economic buyer always passes it off to somebody, right? And so what happens is you start off and, hey, we're going to have a kickoff call, and you get super right into like the project plan and everything. Economic buyer is not there and everything. That's not what you do, right? You have I like to have a 20-minute intro call. CSM runs it, right? The CSM is working through the economic reasons why they purchased, that they heard from sales and got from the transition or some fields in the CRM, and said, hey, you're looking to increase or decrease your X, Y, and Z and use our software for that. What is the percentage? What is this? What KPI are you judged on, right? And that's sort of like a little slide that I have that, by the way, just gets copied right into your business review, whether it be quarterly, yearly, or whatever. And if you have the economic buyer on the line with the admin person that always winds up kind of stalling out a little bit, and they're like, yeah, this is, to save X, Y, and Z money, or to do whatever your software does, then you're suddenly back to like, why did you miss this meeting? How come you didn't send these files? I thought you were just trying to improve your sales performance or your, time to close, your X or your Y, whatever your software does. You're not talking in terms of like project management. I have this deliverable due on this certain date. It's like, I thought our goal here was to save you X amount or give you this return on investment, right? And go from there. And again, you're just advocating for the people because they should be paying for it already, right? Like, I can't stand it when people don't start charging until the software is live. That's a old thing that should not be happening, but it still happens. But so that's just the core framework that we usually roll out. That's what you should be doing. And it's a lot easier to work that way. And then, there's some other things I do. I always feel bad because I know I talked about these recently, but, if it's within the first 2 weeks, your salesperson's on the hook for getting that thing involved. If they handed it over to you and then you have this kickoff meeting, or they didn't show up for the kickoff meeting and then they're gone, a lot of people will suddenly they wait. What winds up happening in reality is that these things go on for like 60 days and then they churn or they just disappear. You never hear from them. And then that winds up being churn for the post-sale group, where I'm just basically saying like 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, if that sales a problem, and if a month goes by and the customer is not getting involved and we're not hearing back from them, I'm like, this is an implementation. This is a bad deal. That's a clawback on your commission. That is not churn on post-sale. But people don't do it. They don't attack things when they're right in front of them. They don't think about this in this proactive get in front of the risk thing. They wake up and they suddenly look at their backlog and they've got 70 backlog projects and some have been going on for a year, and like, it's on you now. So sorry,
Yeah, no.
So that's a framework. Like, there's lots of little things you can do, but like, if you think about, okay, how are you kicking your projects off? Are you walking into the meeting? Do you have context about them? Are you running them through the same questions that your sales team did? You should be elevating to the next level. If they said, yeah, I have a customer who they sell software to help close deals faster. And, if the CRO that bought the software is trying to improve his close rate by 20%, they might have said, we're trying to improve our close rate. And then you get onto the kickoff call and you're like, okay, we heard, which code here, we talked internally about you. And we heard that you're trying to close this deal faster. Or are you trying to close deals faster? What number? Like, what number are you held by? What are you promising? And then you see it, you're nodding your head. I'm not sure if people can see that, but like that's what it is right there. And, there's a big difference between, hello, your team member didn't show up to the kickoff call versus like, hey, I thought you were trying to save 20% on your deal. I always say on kickoff, like, oh, okay, so we say this, if you do a lot of these tactics you're not doing in the post-sale team, we could easily increase your GRR by 20%. I say that right in those calls now, like how many, what would you do with 20 points? What is that actual money to you right now? And they're like, that's like $4, $5, $6, $10 million, right? I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good, right? So you got to talk in those terms because those are the terms why people churn. And then the other thing is if you're not working in software, there are stuff that has those things, then it's a whole lot harder, right? So sell painkillers, not vitamins, and you'll have a lot easier job on that. So
yeah, no, and I love what you said.
Big noise, by the way.
I know, no doubt, no doubt. I actually thought it could have happened somehow in pickleball. That's why I asked the question.
No. So I play a lot of a lot of pickleball, but no, that did not happen in pickleball. I coach basketball as well too. And so, yeah, that's in play, but like, no, pickleball, the injuries are a little different there.
Fair. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like how you were chatting through too about how to talk about retention and tying that back to an actual dollar amount too, because I think that's so many. And I know certainly you've worked and seen leaders from all over the table, right? And except maybe CFOs, because there's never a bad
CFOs are my best partners in all of these.
Love a CFO.
Yeah, they're just, they're very easy and transparent to work with.
But like, I liked where you brought that because it's kind of the universal language of, hey, we're talking about this. It's going to relate back to, business metrics that matter. It's not just this fluffy thing. And I think that works for a lot of different reasons. It's also a really darn good way, honestly, to ensure as a customer success leader or as an exec on that side of the world to say, hey, this is what the team's actually bringing to the table, and then even on the project side, if you're able to cut that cycle shorter and reduce all the, costs around that, like I think in my experience doing exactly what you said is probably one of the most valuable damn pieces of advice that anybody could do. And now I'm going to get a little spicy, but I can't help it. It's important. It's important. We as leaders, if we want to be taken seriously, we can't sit around all the time and say, how do we own the number and not like actually talk, right? As with a business acumen, like you said in that language. And I think it's so important.
On that note, right? I remember I have a famous thing with Christy since you're chatting about that, where she kind of went off about that whole thing. But I believe, if you're in an exec meeting, right, you should always walk in there, or since you were asking about implementation, or it could be a customer that's in red, right? There should be a part of the meeting where you're sitting there talking about, these are our current customers at risk. And sure, on some of them, you're like waiting on something for product. Where is that? Where is this? Where's that? This is an issue with this. Or, if it's a support team, you've got these too many requests, and if support is a different organization, what's going on here, X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to be honest, it's a lot like the game of Survivor. I've always called it corporate Survivor, but like, the companies I've been at that were successful, we kind of ran like that. Like we got in each other's faces and we pushed each other. But we were successful because it wasn't like, oh, gee, yeah, sorry about that. It's like, no, it's, you need to hold each other accountable for things. So yeah. The first is like, oh, I just wish I had some way to talk about these. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to get too spicy on this.
No. That's good. And you know what's really weird? What's really weird is like, I watched your stuff. I watched Christy's stuff. I swear, like that particular said rant that you guys went on, I really am sad that I hadn't actually watched it because now, well, I mean, to be really honest, I'm going to go back and watch it because
it's not like really YouTube. Good. There's like a YouTube short. I'll send the link over to you. It's just like, it'll take a minute of your life. I had some fun and put some like dramatic music behind it because it's just one of those things. We all love Christy. So
yes, absolutely. And let's be honest, we're all humans. Every once in a while, we like a little dose of drama, right? I mean, I don't want to live in it, but I'll go visit.
What's your reality? Just embarrassed to even have when your kids are around. Show of choice. Real Love Island.
The weird thing is that like I don't even reality TV. Like I wish I could, but the thing that I do that I don't talk about a lot is I really like the true crime stuff.
Oh, so you're the, I know the type. Actually, I brings up a different question. I'm trying to really here. How do you order your steak?
I like it rare, honestly. I am a big rare steak person. If anything else, I'm sorry. That's
no, you're yourself. You're redeeming yourself. The psychopaths saying, well done. And I'm just like, and $30 and they're cooking the taste out of it. Like, absolutely not.
No, you can take your well done steak and go hit it up against a wall or whatever, because it's not, no.
Yeah. I've got a good podcast for you, which I'll suggest after this.
But otherwise, honestly, I've always been, my dad used to joke. He would say, whoever takes you out, they're going to have a really easy time because the only thing you like to eat is macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. Like, I never even got into like a steak, you could say, until I was probably 23 or 24 years old. And it wasn't that I didn't like it, was just I didn't like it. I wanted Kraft Velveeta in the box and Fruit Loops.
So you wanted for the Kraft Velveeta and not the mac and cheese. Were you a Hydrox or an Oreos person? Okay. Little Debbie?
No, but I absolutely love the snowballs. I don't remember the damn brand, but
Yeah.
I liked it because grandma would take me to the discount bakery store and we could
Yeah.
get
The pink ones that would shake were really good too. So anyways, I digress. Okay. Try just triangulating on you there.
understood. No, no, no. I dig it. I dig it. Like if you had to say what's like one thing and I know this is a question that I'm curious, like what's the thing that we could maybe tweak on this list, and it doesn't have to just be CS, it can be services related. Like what's something that like you really are just passionate about, we don't really get right that we could work on as, as a practice standpoint of CX. And I know that's really big, so I apologize. But I think it's
I work with like 10 companies a month and I just see so much.
I know you do. That's why I'm like, I want to hear this.
One thing that I consistently see across the board is lack of proactivity. It is just 100% lack of proactivity. And then some people think they're proactive is proactive when it's actually just reactive. But like there is just not getting in front of the problem. Green customers are all set. I'm going to go focus on the reds where, they'll go focus on a red 10K a year problem customer when their EK a year green customer is like, I never hear from those guys. Right. So it is that lack of proactivity that is like we see a lot of companies go through a lot of churn analysis. It's first year churn. It's usually because they had a bad implementation going on. And then after that is because a lack of proactivity, a lack of showing value and ROI back to the customer. 100%. I can just walk through all of our customers and be like, did you do any type of value, or did you send a Loom video? Did you do a QBR? Did you do an X? No, don't all the time. All of these, and all these other things. So that's my 100%. We could talk about all these grand things or whatever, but like just people aren't doing that. And I'm talking about like almost every customer. And now obviously we get brought in when there's an issue. So I don't get talked to a lot of people that are doing it right. But I mean, we're doing some stuff right now for some customers that they've got low churn and they're still not being proactive, but they just haven't hit that scale yet where, suddenly that would suddenly become a problem. So.
Cool. No, yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to mention or ask about was what are your thoughts on the whole CSAT going into MPS?
Does anybody give a
Talk to
shit
us
about
about
this?
that.
Really? Like,
That's good because people still talk about it. Yeah.
glad somebody's serving their fucking customers. Like, Jesus. What? So I grew up through e-commerce and NPS was a thing. Do I think it's terrible? Sometimes, yeah. Terrible versus not doing anything at all. Even worse, right? I'm a CSAT person, but just start serving your customers. Like, sorry, but like sometimes your board likes all their portcos reporting on NPS. So guess what? You're reporting on NPS.
Right.
So sorry, I've been on panels about that for years and everything. I'm just like, oh my God, it's just such a tired, not you, I don't mind you bringing up. I just can't believe that that's still going on. It's like, Chevy, Ford, Mercury.
Oh, gosh.
You know what I mean?
Here, you know exactly what you mean. And it's hilarious because it makes me think about the whole Duke and Tar Heels in North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? It's where, since you have, since you got like half named in basketball, we'll talk about that for the basketball tie-in here. Yes.
The thing about with all of CS, right? Like somebody gets an easy target and they start kicking the shit out of it. And I realize I have to put explicit on this and I'll have my editor go bleep some stuff out, but like, and then everybody piles on and everything. And then you've got this other person like, I wish we could just do that regular NPS, right? I mean, so that's what drives me crazy. It's like, okay, what's better? And then, you've got the people with these huge budgets talking about all the things that they do and everything. It's like, sometimes some of these software just came with the NPS, so they put it out there and I don't know. So yeah, that's my answer on that is that just be surveying your customers, do both, see which one and see where they net out. Do NPS 6 months and CSAT every 6 months. Pull them both in, normalize it from there, right? Yeah. Don't be the problem. Anyways.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting. I mean, I feel the same way, honestly, right? From a perspective of, is it not? And, do some A/B testing, figure it out. But I just knew that this would be a really great example for people to understand how you bring stuff to the real. And so I was like, we're going to go for it. So
yeah, just be doing something, right? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, So it's interesting, talking about client risk, and I know I've seen actually some stuff that Christy put just recently on health score that I really love.
Oh, I'll have
And
to go
part
check
of
it out. Little side note, I have filtered out a lot of CS from my feed, like a lot, like most, like down to like 2 or 3 people, I think. And one of it's because I never want to be like comedians, for example. Not that I'm a comedian. They don't listen to other comedians because they're afraid of hearing their material and they'll accidentally write a joke and it's been in their subconscious and they're afraid of copying other people. So, and I've seen people copy my stuff, whatever. So I try A, not to see if people are doing that. And then B, I'm trying to make sure I didn't read somebody's thing and then do X, Y, and Z. So I went through a conscious exercise about a year ago and just like, I want to see what finance people are talking about. I want to see what investors are talking about. I want to see what sales people are talking about and marketing people. That's where you learn, like, I can't remember who it was. It was probably Sherry. I think it's Sherry Schrembeck, but like, don't go to CS conferences. It's fucking echo chamber. Just go to a finance or a GTM or a pavilion thing where you get all these things and choose the different tracks or something like that. But like, we're going to get in the same room and talk about NPS versus CSAT or something. Why don't you learn like how people are selling or how people are, I don't know. You get the point. I don't want to just hammer on that one. So. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's powerful because, and I love, like you say, I mean, people that are kind of the light way, like you said, CS to CS to CS, it becomes this whole like, well, yeah.
And then I'll see it and then I'll post something and they're like, hey, you didn't talk about the X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was doing my PhD dissertation here. Like, if you want me to cover every possible use case, here's my hourly fee and I'm happy to chat about that. But like, everybody, that stuff just drives me absolutely berserk. So anyways, yeah, there you go. Good job of getting me all fired up. I said I wasn't going to do.
Well, this one's probably going to get you even more fired up. I'm sorry in advance. I'm curious what, and I actually had some conversation. Christy, actually, we recorded just last week, ironically. So
you asked her how to piss me off and she gave you a couple of good things.
No, she didn't. I'm sure she would, but I didn't. But no, we talked about cheese. I mean,
But she loves her cheese. Yeah. Do you ever, I think she takes her American cheese and then folds it into 16ths. Do you ever do that with a toothpick? Yeah.
That is really a neat trick. No, I have to ask. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out, back to the subject, because we could talk cheese forever. Let's be real, Jeff, about the cheese. See, my brain's already cheese.
I can tell you, you're a man on the moon right now.
So what's the,
is it a Greek?
Like on LinkedIn specifically, like, what do you think are like the no-nos of reaching out and trying to connect with people? Like, we know the power of network. It's so, is there anything that really, I'll go to, because I've watched a little bit of the show, what really grinds your gears,
Obviously, some of the things you have to do are to connect with somebody and immediately start selling your services to them. Like that's right there. What are the, if somebody reaches out and they're like, hey, I got a quick question, X, Y, and Z, like, I'm happy to do that. I don't know. Oh my God, I see seller stuff. Like, I'll get, oh man, no, I don't want to get that one's too, I don't want to expose some people or piss them off. But like, I try and help out as many people as possible. If somebody reaches out to me and they're really in a bind, I'm happy to give them 15 minutes and to chat. If you can find 15 minutes on my calendar, like, absolutely, right? Don't sell me something and don't try and pitch your product to me. Don't try and do your X. It's just like, I'm all done with all of that stuff. But like, I would like to have more time reserved for me to have chats with people that, need some help about something. So I actually do that. I don't know. I don't know if that's getting to what you're looking for here, but like in terms of networking, if you always want to tailor it to what the person is. Like, why are you connecting with that person? Like, why are you doing that? Right. Like, I know some people that tried to connect to me. They're like, oh, how do you expand my brand and X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, look, if I didn't have a company and I was trying to put my kids through college, like, I wouldn't be doing all of this stuff. I didn't post on LinkedIn until I started my own company, really. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get on that, right? Which is like 2020. So it always shocks me when people come out and they've got full-time gigs working for real companies doing all this brand building and everything. And I'm like, why? I just don't know why sometimes. And some of the best people I know have never posted. And so I'm always like, I always feel bad about writing some stuff because I'm like, not going to mention their names, but I'll just say my friends Mark or Andrew or X or Y, these people that, I reported to years ago that never post or do anything like that. I'm like, that should be posted, not me or not this person. And they're like, so I don't know. So sometimes I'm wondering like what the why is behind a lot of the posts. Sometimes it's very performative. I can't stand it when people do the whole like, I'm hot, here's a picture of myself. No, I'm just going to post some random BS on it. That's why even when I do a meme, which I know is going to pull a lot of people in, I try to make those my most like informative posts, right? Or else it's like, oh, you're the meme guy. Like, great. You know what I mean? We all know who those people are. But I'm like, here's a meme and here's some value and stuff like that. But in terms of the networking, like write a nice thing. Don't be upset if somebody doesn't get back to you. I've certainly seen stuff. And sometimes a lot of us are like, oh, that was really nice. I would love to respond, but I don't have 5 minutes right now. And this is a 5-minute type of response. So you don't have the time to do it and then you forget about it. Right. So, but I get a lot of like, oh, I guess you don't talk with people sometimes. And I'm like, strike while the iron's hot sometimes. Yeah. You got a lot of answers there. I'll stop it there. So
yeah, no, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I will say that I'm one of those people, right, that obviously I've got the full time again do the post.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when I start because I ask the same question that you do, like, why the hell do people do this? I even ask myself that sometimes, like, why am I doing this at 4 a.m.? Why do I get up and do this at 4 a.m.? Honestly, it started for me anyway, because I needed something. So I didn't go absolutely insane because I got beat off,
Right.
That's the thing. And so like, it was like, hey, I'm just going to do this to keep, from.
No, yeah. Or you've got general, like you love talking about certain things and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. But there's some posts that I see that I'm like, that is more involved than my college, like 400 level final. And I'm just like for 2,000 views, really? Like
my pet peeve is when I see like the quotes in the box and it's just a quote in the box. And again, I'm not picking on anybody that does a quote in the box. I'm just going to
quote in the box.
It could be so no. So it's just essentially they're just posting about like a quote of the day. Like you're going to, win for rainbows.
Usually when they post a hot picture of themselves, right?
A hot picture or something. And then there's like, 10,000 likes. That's why I don't feel guilty about posting as a post. Because I know that there's people that are better at what I do than me, even though I'm really good at what I do.
But there are certain people that like to associate with, batshit crazy Southern people, right? So,
And that's why, that's the
you've
name.
got your tribe.
I feel seen.
On your latest post, and then you had a nice new updated profile picture. And I'm like, they can't take the crazy out of her eyes, though. Look at that.
Oh, it gets even worse, too. Just ask my husband. It gets really good. I look at people that have never had a real, like, professional role their whole lives, right? They can't say, oh, yeah, I've done X, Y, and Z with legitimacy. It's just, hey, I decided I was going to jump into thought leadership. It took off like
I'm not going to mention names, but there are
I'm not either.
There are a few out there that have never done the gig. So I think actually Miranda probably wrote it recently where she just like, if you follow somebody, go check out their thing. See if they've actually done the gig and did it for a while and they didn't get bumped around every 9 months. So, if you see it every year, you see the role change, that means somebody figured out their shit 6 months into it and they got canned. And then it took them another couple of months to get a gig. So take a look at those, see if they were there for a long period of time. Did they actually do the thing that they're posting about and stuff like that? And so that's my whole thing on that, because there's some people out there who write incredible stuff. They haven't done the gig. So, check your sources.
For sure. Well, thank you. This has been a blast. I've really had a good time and I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today. But tell us how to find more of you. I know you're obviously on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
How should we best find you?
Just go to LinkedIn if you can figure out the spelling. Infinite Renewals is the website. That'll drive you anywhere you need to go from there. But, don't read my stuff. You'd probably be better for it, I think.
All right, Rebels. Well, thank you so much. It's been a great time chatting. And until next time, keep it real. Bye for now.
Probably hit the record, but